Okay, I'm gonna go over how to know if it's a multiplication problem versus division, and we're gonna look at those problems involving fractions. So again, one of the biggest things is when you get your answer, does it even make sense? So if you're not sure, especially with division, try both of them. That was one of the things we talked about. So when you are multiplying, remember to keep in mind that we do need to make it improper if we have a mixed number. And remember how you do that is if I have 2.5 times 3, I bring down the denominator, I multiply 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 1 is 5, and then I multiply this by 3 over 1. Remember, we do not flip when we're multiplying, okay? Now, I do not say KFC here. We are multiplying by the reciprocal, which we call the flip. And so that's how we do it. Same thing here. Take your fraction. First thing you do is you make it improper. So that would be something over 428, 31. And then we do not, first step, we don't do anything crazy with it. We leave it alone. We then go ahead and actually do make them both improper first. So then this is something over 2. If you do that, you get 3. That's step 1. And then you can then, step 2, keep the first fraction. Don't you ever flip that one. And then you multiply it by the reciprocal, and then everything is the same over here. Make sure your answers are proper and also in simplest form. Okay, so if you are going to do these problems, again, more practice, but again, make sure you're paying attention to sign. So for like this one, this would be 44 over 60, and you can simplify it by at least 2, which would give you 22 over 30, but then 2 again, which is 11 over 15, and that is the answer there. This one, you keep the first fraction, multiply by the reciprocal, and you get 10 over 4. But since that is more than 1, 10, 4, that's 2 and 2/4, which if you know simplified is 2.5. Pay attention to your sign. Okay, same thing, I could do those, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. So how do we know what kind of problem we're involving here? Does your answer even make any sense? So this table shows some ingredients of the taco salad. If you make double the recipe, how many cups of cheese is needed? So we just need to look at the cheese, so not this and not this. Double indicates that we are going to multiply. Why? Because of the word double. So we are going to actually multiply by 2. Multiply by 2. So then all you would do is 1 1/4 times 2, or 2 times 1 1/4. Remember, order does not matter there. And then you just follow the rules. Remember, we don't flip with this one because it is multiplication. When you get your answer, does it make sense? So this answer should be more than 2, right? So it should be a little bit more than 2. So this would be 2 over 1 times 5 over 4, which is 10 over 4, which is 2.5, like we did in the last question. That makes sense, 2.5 cups. Because 1 cup plus 1 cup is 2 cups, so 1/4 and 1/4 makes a half. There you go. Okay. So let's think about this one. You have a pile of mulch. Okay, so that's mulch. That weighs 10 5/6 tons. Oh goodness. And you have 6 flower beds. And you want to fill with mulch. How many tons of mulch can you put in each flower bed? And so then I want to know in one flower bed. This is part of the question. So I want to put the mulch into the flower beds. So I'm going to basically put the same amount in each. So I don't have anything left over. So what operation we would use is division. Why? Because in the question we want to know how much tons of mulch for each flower bed. that tells you the order. Where are you going to start out with? You're going to start out with your mulch, and you're going to divide it into your flower beds. Should make sense to you. Okay, let's see if this answer is reasonable, because if you do it the other way around, your answer will not make any sense. So this would be 65, and then divided by 6/1. I did not flip anything, I just did make it improper. Step 2, keep the first, multiply by the reciprocal. You actually get 65/36, which is over 1. So how many 36s go into 56? That's going to give you 1 with a remainder of 20. But logically here, you would have 1 and 20 out of 36. You actually can divide by 4, which is your largest. So 1 and 5/9. Let's see if that makes sense. If this is 1 and 5/9 plus 1 and 5/9, and so on and so forth. Okay, that should add up to, that should add up to 10. Because 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 would be 6. And then 5/9, 5/9, 5/9, 5/9, 5/9, 5/9 would give you then what you were looking for. So that sounds reasonable. If you did it the other way around, you would have a number larger than 10.5, and that doesn't make any, or 10 and 5/6, and you don't even have, that's all you have. You can't put more in a mulch bed than what you actually have. Okay, so that one is division. This one here, let's look at this. If you have a shelf that is 24.5 inches long, each Xbox game you have has a width of 5/8 of an inch. How many games can you fit on a shelf? So we want to have each of the games. So games are like really small. We want to know how many to fit in there. So how many games can we fit on a shelf? Each of them, each game is that wide, and this is how long our shelf is. So literally think about it. Here's my shelf, and then I'm going to put my Xbox games on it. So what would you do? Operation should be division. Why? Because I'm taking my shelf and I'm figuring out how many of them I can put on there. So kind of like dividing it into my games. So what are you going to start out with? Are you going to start out with 24.5 or 5/8? That's the part you need to be careful with. Okay. Well, you're going to start out with the shelf. You got to figure out, start out with the shelf. That's the only space you have. And then you're dividing it by your games. So it would be 24.5 divided by 5/8. Let's see if this answer makes sense. So this is over 2, so it'd be 48/49. All I'm doing in step 1 is making it improper. Step 2, keep the first fraction, multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, Ms. Edwards is going to do a little quicker division. Feel free to do it the other way around. I just do a little quicker, so I have to deal with bigger numbers. 36, 16, 19. So I got 196/5. You probably had a little bigger number. 5 goes into 196. So I got 3. So I got 39 and 1/5 games. So really, how many full games can I have? I could fit 39 on there. I can't fit 40 because I don't have enough space. So the answer is 39. That sounds reasonable. If you did the other way around, you would have had like 1/39 of a game. Not making any sense. You have all that space, you can't even fit 1 on there. Make sure your answer makes sense. Okay. All right, looking at this one. In a recent year, the weather of Columbus was partly cloudy 2/5 of the days. Assuming that there are 365 days in a year, how many days were partly cloudy? 2/5 of the days. If we're having 2/5 of something, it means we're taking a fraction of something. So it should be multiplication. So we have 2/5 of many days are there? 365. We want to know how many days are partly cloudy, so we don't have to do any subtraction or anything crazy. Because remember, I could say how many days were not partly cloudy, and then you would have to do a different step. So let's see if this actually sounds reasonable. So remember, 2/5 of the days, I would not have to flip anything. So you could do it whatever way you want. If you want to take 365 divided by 5 and multiply by 2, that's fine. Or you can just multiply the tops, multiply by the bottom. Here we do 365 times 2. I got 730 cut into 5 pieces. Now it should be a whole number. Oopsie, sorry, that's 1. 23, that's 4, 20, 30, which is 6. I got 146 days are cloudy. Or partly cloudy. That's reasonable, because I can't have a number larger than 365. So if you try to do division, something ain't working there, because you would have got either a bigger number than that. So looking at your answers, make sure, does it even make any sense? Now, if I ask you how many days were partly or were not partly cloudy, then that's when you could just easily take 365 and subtract 146, and then that would give you how many are not. But I have also kids say, well, can I just do 3/5 of 365? Sure, that's the leftovers, so that works as well. All right, so let's look at this one here, which is kind of what I just said. So let's say we have 80 football players on the team, okay? How many students play offense? How many students play defense? How many more students play offense than defense? So let's start out with part A right here. So I got 80 players on the team. This is a fraction of the players. Offense, defense, obviously if you add those together, you get 5/5. Whatever I get has to add up to 80. So both of those numbers have to be less than 80, but add up to that. Now, you can do it a couple different ways, but you should realize that it is multiplication. Why? Because it is a fraction of the players. So offense is 3/5 of 80. So 3/5 times 80 over 1. You can do it whatever way you want. You want to do 80 divided by 5 and then multiply by 3. Doesn't matter. I'm going to do 240 over 5, which if I do that in my head, because I'm not going to have a fraction of a person, right? We talked about that previously. That would be 448. So we did that right. 240 divided by 5. That'd be 4 with 4 left over. Yep, 48. So if this is offense is 48, I could then just subtract 48 and 80. Or you could do 2/5 times 80 over 1, and then 160 over 5 is another way you could do it. It's up to you. You would get 32 here. Now, some kids say, well, Ms. Edwards, couldn't I take 80 players, cut it into 5 pieces, that's 6 pieces, and then figure out what each piece is, and then go that way? Sure, doesn't matter to me. But the question here says, how many more students play offense than defense? So that's basically the difference between the two. So that's actually not taking your fractions and separating it. I want to know how many actual players. So that's when you do 48 minus 32, and you would get 16. So that's a difference between offense and defense there. So whatever way works best for you, doesn't matter. It's still multiplication for part A, which is technically part A. But part B involves subtraction because it says how many more students. Okay? Okay, let's look at this one. I want to split my Dairy Queen ice cream birthday log cake into 6 pieces. I'm going to split it into pieces, 6 pieces. So I got a birthday cake log. I'm gonna cut it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, all the same amount. But I only have 2/3 of my DQ birthday ice cream left, so we ate 1/3. How big or how long will each slice be? I want to know how long each slice will be. So that's the question. Okay. I only have 2/3 of my cake left. I'm assuming that these are inches or whatever. So what would be how big the pieces would be? I'm splitting it into pieces. So it should be division, but the problem is where are you starting out with? Well, out of this cake, it's 2/3 of a foot, inch, I don't know, it didn't say. And I'm gonna split it into 6. Literally, the question says it. I'm going to take my Dairy Queen birthday cake, which is this, and I'm going to split it into 6 pieces. So let's see if this answer makes sense. Repeat the first, multiply by the reciprocal. You get 2/18, which is 1/9. So it's 1/9 of the cake. 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 would actually give you 6/9, which gives you 2/3. If you did it the other way around, you would have said each slice is 1 and I think it was would end up being 1 and something like 1/3. You don't even have 1 and 1/3 of the cake. You have a fraction of a cake. So make sure again your answer makes sense. I should have put units on this one, so that's my fault. Okay. So I'm not going to solve this one, but let's look at here. If the width of my rectangle of the room is 5.5 feet long, and the length is 2.5 feet, or sorry, 5 2/3 long, and the length is 2.5 feet long, what is the area of the room? You know anything about area? I'm actually asking you to find the area. So that actually is multiplication. Why? Because area is length times width. But for this one, all we would have to do is make them improper, multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms, and then get our answer in simplest form. You would not flip for this one. Okay? All right, so you're gonna go ahead and work on the worksheet, and then tomorrow you will have a test. All right, see you later.